Hi, welcome to the Aftermath Tales. Ready for a new story? Very well, let's begin.
Some lies are so beautiful, you'd rather live in them forever than face the ugly truth waiting on the other side. My name is Angela Matthews, and for 3 years I thought I was living the perfect life. I had everything I'd ever dreamed of: a loving husband, a beautiful son, and the kind of peace that comes from finally knowing where you belong in the world. If only I'd known that my entire world was built on a foundation of deception. Growing up, I was what you'd call the easy daughter. While my older sister Betty turned our family dinners into war zones and our phone calls into crisis management sessions, I kept my head down, worked hard, and tried to make my parents proud. It wasn't that I was naturally perfect. I just learned early that someone had to be the stable one. My parents, David and Margaret Thomas, built their fortune from nothing. Dad started with a small import business in the back of our garage, and Mom kept the books while raising 2 daughters who couldn't have been more different. They worked 18-hour days to give us opportunities they never had, and I never forgot that sacrifice. Betty, on the other hand, seemed determined to throw those opportunities away. At 28, my sister had already been through more scandals than most people experience in a lifetime. Married men, lawsuits from angry wives, financial schemes that always seemed to blow up in spectacular fashion. Betty collected drama like other people collected stamps. For years, my parents bailed her out, covered for her, made excuses. They told themselves she was just finding her way or going through a phase. The breaking point came when Betty had an affair with the mayor's husband. The scandal made the local papers. Photos of her fleeing the man's house in a bathrobe while his wife screamed from the front lawn went viral on social media. The lawsuit that followed cost my parents $250,000 in legal fees and hush money. That's when Dad finally said enough. "We're done," he told Betty over a family dinner that felt more like a funeral. "We've given you every chance, every opportunity, every benefit of the doubt. You're 28 years old, and you're still acting like a teenager with no consequences. We can't keep enabling this behavior." Betty didn't take it well. She screamed, threw accusations, claimed we were all jealous of her freedom and authenticity. She said Mom and Dad had always loved me more, that they were looking for an excuse to cut her off and make me the sole heir to their business empire. Maybe there was some truth to that. After years of Betty's chaos, I had become the daughter they could rely on. I worked in the family business, helped them expand into new markets, never gave them a reason to lose sleep. When they decided to make me the primary beneficiary of their estate, it felt like recognition for years of dedication. Betty saw it as the ultimate betrayal. That was over 4 years ago. Since then, Betty had disappeared from our lives completely. No calls, no visits, no contact at all. My parents worried sometimes, wondering if she was safe, if she had enough money, if they'd been too harsh. But there was also a peace in our house that hadn't existed in years. That's when Dean came into my life. I met him at a coffee shop near the university where I was taking night classes for my MBA. He was sitting alone at a corner table, staring at his laptop with the kind of intense focus that suggested he was either writing the great American novel or trying to solve world hunger. When he looked up and smiled at me, I felt something I'd never experienced before, like the world had suddenly clicked into focus. Dean was everything Betty's men weren't. He was kind without being weak, confident without being arrogant, and he had this way of listening that made you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. He didn't have a trust fund or a flashy car or any of the surface-level attractions that usually drew Betty's attention. He was just real. We talked for 3 hours that first day, about books, about dreams, about the way the afternoon light hit the windows just right. When he asked for my number, I gave it to him without hesitation. Our relationship unfolded like something out of a romantic movie. Dean was patient with my busy schedule, understanding about my family obligations, and genuinely interested in my goals and ambitions. He never made me feel like I had to choose between him and my family, the way some of my previous boyfriends had. About 4 months into our relationship, Dean asked me something that caught me off guard. "Are you an only child?" he said one evening as we walked through the park near my apartment. I stopped walking. No, actually, I have an older sister. Why do you ask? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe concern. You've never mentioned her. Betty and I, we're not close right now. I sat down on a nearby bench, and Dean joined me. She's been going through a really difficult time, and my parents had to make some tough decisions about boundaries. What kind of difficult time? I hesitated. Even though Dean and I were getting serious, talking about Betty felt like opening a wound that was still trying to heal. But there was something in his expression, an intensity that made me want to be completely honest. Betty has a pattern of getting involved with married men, I said carefully. It's caused a lot of problems for our family over the years. Dean was very still beside me. What kind of problems? Lawsuits, mostly. Angry wives. Public scandals. I sighed. Worst one was about years ago. Do you remember that story in the news about the mayor's wife catching her husband with another woman? The photos that went viral? Dean's face went pale. The woman in the bathrobe? That was Betty. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the news articles I'd saved, hoping someday I might understand what drove my sister to such destructive choices. Rebecca Thomas. Betty, that's her full name. She'd been having an affair with Mayor Davidson's husband for months. Dean stared at the photo on my phone for a long moment. In it, Betty was clearly visible fleeing the Davidson house in nothing but a silk robe, her face twisted with anger as Mrs. Davidson screamed at her from the front steps. The lawsuit cost my parents almost $300,000, I continued. Legal fees, settlement money to keep it from getting even messier. But the worst part was watching Betty act like she was the victim in all of it. She claimed the wife was jealous and bitter, and that she was just following her heart. I wiped away a tear I hadn't realized was falling. I miss her, you know. Despite everything, she's still my sister. I worry about her all the time. I wish I knew if she was safe, if she had enough money, if she's okay, but my parents, they just couldn't take it anymore. Dean was silent for so long that I started to worry I'd shared too much too soon. When I looked at him, his expression was strange, almost stricken. Dean, are you okay? He blinked, seeming to come back from somewhere far away. I'm sorry, that must be incredibly difficult for your family. It is. But I keep hoping that someday Betty will realize what she's doing to herself and to the people who love her. I keep hoping she'll come home. Dean took my hand, but his grip felt different somehow, tighter, more desperate. You're amazing, you know that? He said quietly. After everything she's put your family through, you still love her. You still worry about her. She's my sister, I said simply. That doesn't just stop. Looking back now, I realize that was the moment everything changed for Dean, not just in how he felt about me, but in how he understood the entire situation he'd gotten himself into. At the time, though, I just thought he was being compassionate about my family's pain. When I introduced him to my parents 2 months later, they loved him immediately. Dad appreciated Dean's work ethic and business sense. Mom adored how he always brought her flowers and remembered details about her garden. They saw in Dean what I saw, a man who would build something lasting, who understood the value of commitment and family. We were engaged within a year. The wedding was everything I dreamed of, small, elegant, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Dean looked at me during our vows, like I was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered. When we danced to our first song as husband and wife, he whispered in my ear, I never knew I could be this happy. Neither did I. Our son Zach arrived after, and watching Dean become a father was like falling in love all over again. He was up for every midnight feeding, patient through every teething episode, and absolutely devoted to making sure our son felt loved and secure. Dean had grown up without a father, and he was determined to be everything for Zach that he'd never had. At 3 years old, Zach was the perfect combination of both of us, Dean's curious nature and my stubborn determination. He had Dean's dark hair and my eyes and a laugh that could light up any room. Watching the two of them together, building elaborate block towers or reading bedtime stories in funny voices, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. My parents doted on their grandson, and Dean fit seamlessly into our family traditions. Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, business discussions, he belonged in our world in a way that felt effortless and natural. This was my life. This was my family. This was everything I'd worked for and dreamed of. I should have known it was too perfect to last. The phone rang at 7:23 p.m. on a Tuesday, right in the middle of Zach's bath time. Dean was on his knees beside the tub, making silly voices for the rubber duck while our son giggled and splashed. It was the kind of ordinary, perfect moment that I'd learned to treasure, the kind that makes you think your life is exactly where it's supposed to be. Dean's phone buzzed against the bathroom counter. He glanced at the screen, and I watched his face change completely. The color drained from his cheeks, and his hand froze halfway to answering. "Who is it?" I asked, lifting Zach out of the tub and wrapping him in his favorite dinosaur towel. I need to take this," Dean said, his voice strange and tight. "Can you finish up here?" He was already walking out of the bathroom, phone pressed to his ear. I heard him say hello in a voice I'd never heard before, cautious, almost fearful. "Daddy?" Zach looked toward the door, confused by the sudden change in energy. "Daddy just has to make a phone call, baby," I said, forcing a smile as I helped him into his pajamas. But something cold was settling in my stomach. In 5 years together, Dean had never acted like that about a phone call. I got Zach settled with his bedtime story, but I could hear Dean's voice drifting from our bedroom, low, urgent, almost pleading. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone made my skin crawl. Dean never sounded desperate. Dean was the steady one, the calm one, the one who solved problems instead of being overwhelmed by them. 20 minutes later, he appeared in Zach's doorway. Our son was already asleep, clutching his stuffed elephant, completely unaware that something had shifted in our world. "We need to talk," Dean said quietly, the 4 words every wife dreads hearing. We went to the living room, and Dean sat heavily on the couch, his head in his hands. I'd never seen him look so defeated, so completely lost. "Dean, you're scaring me," I said, sitting beside him. "What's going on?" He looked up at me with eyes full of pain and regret, and I knew that whatever he was about to say would change everything. "That was Betty," he said. The name hit me like a physical blow. "Betty? My Betty? How did she get your number? How does she even know you exist?" Dean's silence stretched too long, way too long. "Dean." My voice was sharper now. "How does my sister have your phone number?" He took a shuddering breath. "Because I used to know her, before I met you." The room felt like it was tilting. "What do you mean, you used to know her?" "Angela, I need to tell you something about how we met, about why we met." His hands were shaking. "And I need you to know that everything I'm about to say, it doesn't change how much I love you and Zach. Please remember that. You're terrifying me right now. Betty and we were together. Before you. She told me things about your family, about you. She said she'd been treated unfairly, that your parents had chosen you over her, that you were spoiled and cruel and had stolen everything that should have been hers." I felt like I was falling through space. "Together? You mean you dated my sister?" "She convinced me that your family had destroyed her life. She wanted revenge, and she asked me to help her get it." "What kind of revenge?" Dean's voice dropped to a whisper. "She wanted me to make you fall in love with me, and then break your heart, destroy you emotionally, and steal money from your parents' business to ruin them financially." The words hung in the air like poison. I couldn't process them, couldn't make them make sense. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that our entire relationship was a lie? That you approached me as part of some scheme to hurt my family?" "At first, yes. But Angela, you have to understand, when you told me about Betty, about the mayor's husband, about the lawsuit, I realized everything she'd told me was a lie. That news story, those photos, I remembered seeing them months before when they went viral. Betty had painted herself as the victim of your family's cruelty, but you were telling me how much you missed her, how worried you were about her, how you hoped she'd come home someday." I stood up so fast the room spun. "Get out!" "Please, let me explain." "Get out!" The words tore from my throat. "Get away from me right now." Angela, that conversation changed everything for me. I realized I'd been manipulated, that Betty wasn't the person she'd claimed to be. I fell in love with you for real, with the kind, genuine person you actually are. I never went through with any of it. I couldn't steal from your family after learning the truth. I was backing toward the wall, away from him, away from the man I thought I knew. "How long?" "What? How long were you planning to lie to me?" How long have you been living this double life? I haven't been living a double life. I cut Betty off completely when I realized what she really was. I've been trying to protect you and Zach from her ever since. By lying to me for 3 years, by building our entire marriage on a foundation of deception. Because I was terrified of losing you. I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd never forgive me, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing you and Zach. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, my whole body shaking. Did you steal the money? No, I never took a penny. I couldn't go through with any of it once I knew the truth. But you thought about it. You planned it. I was manipulated, Angela. She's not who you think she is. She's not who I thought she was either. I looked up at this man I'd shared a bed with for years, whose child I'd carried, whose name I'd taken, and I felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. Who are you? I whispered. I'm your husband. I'm Zach's father. I'm the man who loves you more than his own life. No, I said, shaking my head. That man doesn't exist. That man was a character you were playing. That's not true. Get out! I screamed again, and this time he flinched like I'd slapped him. I can't look at you right now. I can't be in the same room as you. Angela, please. If you love me, if you've ever loved me, you'll leave right now and give me space to think. Dean stood there for a long moment, looking broken and desperate. Finally, he nodded. I'll stay at Mike's tonight, he said quietly. But Angela, we have a bigger problem. Betty called because she's back, and she's not done with us. The front door closed behind him with a soft click, and I was alone with the wreckage of my perfect life, wondering how everything I thought I knew could crumble in the space of a single conversation. Upstairs, Zach slept peacefully, dreaming innocent dreams, completely unaware that his world had just been shattered too. Dean sat on Mike's couch at 11 p.m., nursing his third beer and staring at the wall like it held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. His best friend had listened to the entire story in silence, occasionally shaking his head or muttering under his breath. Sarah sat curled up in the armchair, her face growing paler with each detail, her hand pressed to her mouth in horror. Wait, Sarah interrupted when Dean finished. Wait. Betty is Angela's sister, the sister who's been cut off from the family? Dean nodded miserably. Oh my God. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Oh my God, Dean. Angela mentioned having a sister who caused problems for the family, but she never really talks about her much. I never even knew her name was Betty. Mike leaned back in his recliner, arms crossed, wearing the expression Dean had been dreading for 3 years. I told you so, he said finally. That's helpful, thanks, Dean muttered. No, seriously, Dean, I literally told you so. Multiple times, for months. Mike counted on his fingers. I told you Betty was poison. I told you she was using you. I told you she was going to destroy your life if you didn't get away from her. Sarah shot her husband a look. Mike, not now. She turned back to Dean, tears in her eyes. Dean, do you understand what you've done? Angela is my best friend. She's been nothing but good to everyone in her life. She loves you completely, trusts with everything, and this is how you repay that trust? Dean winced. I know how it sounds. Do you? Sarah's voice was rising like, Angela is the kindest person I know. She's been an amazing wife to you, an incredible mother to Zach. She welcomed me into your family like I was her own sister. And the whole time you've been lying to her about something this huge? Dean buried his face in his hands. I didn't know how to tell her without destroying everything. So you chose to let her suffer instead. Sarah stood up, pacing now. God, Dean, Angela is my best friend. Zach is our godson. How am I supposed to look her in the eye, knowing I've been having dinner with the man who betrayed her in the worst possible way? Mike reached for his wife's hand. Sarah, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. Angela doesn't deserve this. She's the kindest person I know. She's been nothing but good to everyone in her life, and this is how she gets repaid? You think I don't know that? Dean's voice cracked. You think I haven't been living with this guilt every single day for 3 years? Every time she mentioned Betty, every time she worried about her, every time she blamed herself for not being a better sister, it was like a knife in my chest. Sarah stopped pacing and stared at him. Then why didn't you tell her? Because I was terrified of losing her. Because I knew if she found out the truth, she'd never forgive me, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing her and Zach. "Well, congratulations," Sarah said bitterly. "Now you might lose them anyway, except instead of losing them 3 years ago when you could have been honest, you're losing them now after years of lies." The room fell silent except for the sound of Dean's ragged breathing. Then, suddenly, everything Dean had been holding inside for 3 years came pouring out. His face crumpled, and he began to sob, deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. Sarah, despite her anger, felt her heart break watching this. Without thinking, she pulled out her phone and started recording. This wasn't the smooth manipulator she'd been imagining. This was a man completely shattered by the thought of losing his family. "I don't want to lose my wife and son," he choked out between gasps. "I love them so much. God, I love them so much it hurts. Angela is everything good in my life. She's the reason I wake up every morning wanting to be a better man. And Zach, he's my whole world. The thought of him growing up thinking his daddy abandoned him." Dean doubled over, his hands covering his face as the sobs racked through him. "I would rather die than hurt them. But I've been so scared, so freaking scared that if Angela knew the truth, she'd take Zach and disappear. I've been living in terror for 3 years, and now the worst has happened, and I don't know how to fix it. I never meant for any of this to happen," Dean continued, his voice broken. "I just wanted to help someone I thought had been wronged. But then I met Angela, and she was nothing like what Betty had described. She was kind and genuine, and she loved people so fiercely, even people who had hurt her. When she told me about Betty, about how worried she was, how much she missed her sister, I realized I'd been played by a master manipulator." He looked up at Mike and Sarah, his eyes red and swollen. "The man Angela married, that's who I really am. Not the idiot who got fooled by Betty, but the man who would do anything to protect his family, the man who loves his wife more than his own life. That's real. That's the only thing in this whole mess that's completely real." Sarah stopped recording, her own eyes filled with tears. Mike finally broke the tension. "Okay, everyone take a breath. Sarah, I get why you're upset, but tearing Dean apart isn't going to help Angela right now. How can you be so calm about this?" Sarah turned on her husband. "Your best friend has been lying to my best friend for years." "Because getting angry isn't going to fix anything. And because..." Mike looked at Dean seriously. "Dean, I need you to answer me honestly. When did you realize Betty was lying about Angela's family?" "The night Angela told me about Betty, when she showed me that news article about the mayor's husband. I recognized Betty from the photos immediately, and I realized everything she'd told me about being victimized by her family was complete bullshit." "And what did you do then?" "I cut contact with Betty completely. I never went through with any part of her plan. I never stole a penny from Angela's family." Mike nodded slowly. "And your feelings for Angela?" "Started as an act, became real the moment I got to know her. Everything I've felt for her and Zach for the past 3 years, that's all genuine." Sarah was crying now. "That doesn't change the fact that Angela is going to be devastated. She loves you completely, Dean. She trusts you with everything. Finding out that your entire relationship started as a lie is going to destroy her." "I know." Dean's voice was barely audible. "I know, and I hate myself for it." "Good," Sarah said firmly. "You should hate yourself for it, but the question is, what are you going to do to fix it?" "I don't know if I can fix it. Angela can barely look at me. She told me to get out of our house." Sarah sat back down, wiping her eyes. "Angela is stronger than you think. She's been through hell with her family, and she's survived it. But Dean, if you want any chance of saving your marriage, you need to be completely honest with her. No more protecting her from the truth. No more making decisions for her. Let her decide what she can handle. And if she decides she can't handle it, if she decides she can't forgive me..." Sarah's voice was quiet, but firm. "Then you live with the consequences of your choices, but you don't get to give up without fighting for her first." Mike nodded. "Sarah's right. And Dean, you need to tell her that we all warned you about Betty. She needs to know that every single one of your friends saw through Betty's act immediately." "Why does that matter?" Sarah answered before Mike could. "Because it proves you're not some master manipulator. Angela's probably sitting at home wondering if anything about you is real, if you're capable of fooling her for years. But if she knows that you ignored all your friends' warnings because you believed Betty's sob story, it shows you're just someone who got taken advantage of by a professional liar. I've watched you with Angela, Mike added. I've watched you with Zach. The way you love them, that's not an act. That's real, and everyone who knows you can see it. Dean stared at his beer bottle, peeling off the label in nervous strips. Betty's back, guys. She called tonight. God knows what she's planning. What did she say? Sarah asked. Not much, just hello, Dean, in that voice she uses when she thinks she has all the power. She's probably expecting me to panic, to do whatever she wants to keep her quiet. And are you? Mike challenged. Hell no. I'm done being scared of her. The worst thing that could happen was Angela finding out the truth, and that's already happened. Betty has no power over me anymore. Dean looked up at Mike suddenly. Wait, Mike, you're a private investigator, right? Yeah, why? Can you investigate Betty? I need to know what she's been up to, what her situation really is. Right now she has all the power because we don't know what we're dealing with. Mike exchanged a look with Sarah. Dean, are you sure? Sometimes it's better not to know. No, Dean said firmly. I'm tired of being caught off guard by her. I want to know what her real situation is, where she's been, what she's been doing. If she's planning something, I need to be prepared. It might take some time, Mike warned. Betty's smart, and she's had years to cover her tracks. I don't care how long it takes. I need to know what we're dealing with. Whatever it costs, I'll pay. This one's on the house, Mike said. Your family. Sarah nodded. We'll help however we can. Thanks, Dean said, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. I can't let her destroy what Angela and I have built. Then we won't let that happen, Mike said simply. Dean felt something ease in his chest for the first time since Betty's call. Thanks, man. I can't lose them. I can't lose my family. Then don't. Fight for them. But Dean? Yeah? Next time someone tells you a girl is bad news, maybe listen the first time instead of making us all watch you crash and burn. Despite everything, Dean actually smiled. Deal. His phone buzzed with a text message. For a terrifying second, he thought it might be Betty again, but the name on the screen made his heart skip entirely differently. Angela, we need to talk. Tomorrow. Just us. I need to understand what's real and what isn't. Dean showed Mike the message. See? Mike said. She's not running. She's fighting for your marriage, too. Dean just hoped he could find the right words to prove that everything that mattered, his love for her, his love for Zach, his commitment to their family, was the realest thing in his life. It wasn't easy. Betty had covered her tracks well, and Mike didn't even know where she was living. But he had contacts, patience, and a determination to protect his friends from whatever scheme Betty was planning. For a month, Mike worked his network. He conducted surveillance, interviewed witnesses, and gathered public records, slowly piecing together Betty's recent activities. What he found was worse than any of them had imagined. After 4 weeks of investigation, Mike called Dean and Sarah for an emergency meeting. He spread a file across his kitchen table, filled with photos, witness statements, and public records. Betty's in serious trouble, Mike said without preamble. She's been running a con on a private lender named Marcus Webb, convinced him to leave his wife, gave him some sob story about needing money for a business venture. He gave her $400,000. Sarah's eyes widened. $400,000? Gets worse. Webb's wife is Amanda Webb. She's a very wealthy, very vindictive woman who doesn't take kindly to anyone crossing her family. When she found out about the affair and the missing money, she gave Betty an ultimatum. Return the money with 50% interest, or she'd have her legs broken. Dean felt sick. That's why Betty came back. Exactly. She's not looking for revenge or family reconciliation. She's looking for enough money to pay off Amanda Webb and disappear again, and she figured the easiest mark would be her own family. Mike closed the file. I called Angela and told her everything. You all need to be prepared. Betty's desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. 3 days later, Betty's texts started coming. 3 hours after Dean left, I was still sitting on my kitchen floor, staring at my phone. I'd typed and deleted a dozen messages to him, each one either too angry or too desperate. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't seem to form a coherent thought beyond the repeating loop of everything was a lie, everything was a lie, everything was a lie. That's when my phone rang. Sarah's name lit up the screen. Angela? Her voice was soft, careful. How are you holding up? I let out a bitter laugh. How do you think? My entire marriage is built on a lie. My husband was sent to destroy my family by my own sister. I don't even know who I am anymore. Angela, I need to tell you something. Dean is here with Mike, and he told us everything. My stomach dropped. Everything? About Betty being your sister. About the plan. About how he realized she was lying and never went through with it. I was quiet for a long moment. So you know that my husband used to date my psychotic sister and was planning to steal from my parents. I know that your husband was manipulated by someone who's very good at manipulation. Angela, I need to send you something. Will you watch it? What kind of something? Just, please, watch it and then call me back. A minute later, a video message appeared on my phone. I almost deleted it without watching, but something in Sarah's voice made me hesitate. I pressed play. The video started with Dean sobbing. Not just crying, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that seemed to come from his soul. I don't want to lose my wife and son. His voice was broken, desperate. I love them so much. God, I love them so much it hurts. Angela is everything good in my life. She's the reason I wake up every morning wanting to be a better man. And Zach, he's my whole world. The thought of him growing up thinking his daddy abandoned him. I watched him double over, his hands covering his face as the sobs racked through him. I would rather die than hurt them. But I've been so scared, so freaking scared that if Angela knew the truth, she'd take Zach and disappear. I've been living in terror for 3 years, and now the worst has happened, and I don't know how to fix it. Then came the part that made my own tears start falling. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to help someone I thought had been wronged. But then I met Angela, and she was nothing like what Betty had described. She was kind and genuine, and she loved people so fiercely, even people who had hurt her. When she told me about Betty, about how worried she was, how much she missed her sister, I realized I'd been played by a master manipulator. His voice broke completely as he looked up at the camera, his eyes red and swollen. The man Angela married, that's who I really am. Not the idiot who got fooled by Betty, but the man who would do anything to protect his family. The man who loves his wife more than his own life. That's real. That's the only thing in this whole mess that's completely real. The video ended, and I sat in my kitchen, tears streaming down my face. I called Sarah back immediately. "Did you see it?" she asked. "Is he still there?" "Yes. Don't let him leave. I'm coming over." I drove to Mike and Sarah's house in a fog, my mind racing between fury and heartbreak. The video played on repeat in my head, Dean's broken voice saying my name like a prayer, the way he'd sobbed about losing Zach. I'd never seen him cry like that, not even when his mother died. Sarah was waiting on the front porch when I pulled up. She wrapped me in a hug before I could say anything. "How long have you known?" I asked against her shoulder. "About an hour. Dean told us everything tonight." "And you recorded him without him knowing?" Sarah pulled back to look at me. "I thought you might need to see it someday. To know that whatever else is complicated about this situation, his love for you is real." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Where is he?" "Living room with Mike." "Angela, before you go in there, he's a mess. I've never seen him like this." I walked through the front door on unsteady legs. Dean was sitting on the couch, staring at his hands. When he heard my footsteps, he looked up, and I saw exactly what Sarah meant. His eyes were red and swollen, his face pale and hollow. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Angela," he started to stand, but I held up a hand. Just don't move. I need to say something first." He sank back down, his whole body tense. I saw the video. Dean's face went white. "What video?" "Sarah recorded you. When you were," I gestured vaguely, "when you were breaking down." He looked at Sarah in shock, but she just shrugged. "She needed to see who you really are." I sat down in the chair across from him, needing the distance. "I need you to answer some questions, and I need you to be completely honest. No more protecting me from things you think I can't handle." Dean nodded immediately. "Anything." "How long were you with Betty?" 6 months, from January to July before I met you in August." "Did you love her?" Dean was quiet for a long moment. "I thought I did, but looking back, I think I was more in love with the idea of saving someone who needed saving. Betty was very good at playing the victim. When exactly did you realize she was lying? The night you told me about her. When you showed me that news article about the mayor's husband. I recognized her immediately from the photos, and I realized everything she'd told me about your family was complete bullshit. And you never went through with any part of her plan? Never. I couldn't steal from your parents after learning the truth about who you really were. The plan was supposed to be simple: make you fall in love with me, break your heart, and take the money. But Angela, you weren't what she described at all. You were kind and genuine and everything good in the world. I felt tears starting again. But you still lied to me for 3 years. Because I was terrified. His voice cracked. I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd never forgive me, that you'd take Zach and disappear from my life forever. Did you ever try to contact Betty after we got together? God, no. I blocked her number, deleted her from everything. I never wanted to see her again. Then how did she get your new number? Dean's jaw tightened. I don't know, but Betty's resourceful when she wants something. Mike cleared his throat from the doorway. For what it's worth, Angela, we all told Dean to stay away from Betty from the beginning. We could see she was trouble. I looked at Dean. Why didn't you listen to them? Because I was an idiot who thought I knew better. Because Betty was very convincing when she wanted to be. I was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. The night we met at the coffee shop, was any of that real? Dean leaned forward, his eyes intense. That's when everything became real. I was supposed to approach you, yes. But the moment we started talking, the moment you laughed at something I said, the moment I saw how your eyes lit up when you talked about your dreams, that's when I fell in love with you for real. Everything after that moment was genuine. How do I know you're not lying now? I asked. Because I have nothing left to lose by telling you the truth. The worst thing that could happen was you finding out, and that's already happened. I'm not trying to protect a secret anymore. I'm trying to save my marriage. Sarah spoke softly from the kitchen doorway. Angela, I've watched Dean with you for 3 years. I've seen how he looks at you, how he talks about you when you're not around. That man is completely devoted to you and Zach. Whatever mistakes he made before he knew you, the love is real. I looked back at Dean. This man I'd thought I knew completely. I don't know how to trust you again. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But Angela, please don't give up on us. Please let me prove to you that the man you married is who I really am. And what about Betty? She's back, Dean. What does she want? Dean's expression hardened. I don't know yet, but I'm done being afraid of her. I'm done letting her have power over our family. Our family? I looked at him incredulously. Dean, I don't even know if we still have a family. The pain that crossed his face was so raw it took my breath away. We do, he said quietly. We have to, because I can't live without you and Zach, and because despite everything, I think you still love me too. I hated that he was right. A month after Mike presented his findings about Betty's situation, I was back home with Dean. Not because everything was fixed, far from it, but because we'd agreed to try couples therapy and figure out if our marriage could survive this. Dean was sleeping in the guest room, and every conversation felt like walking through a minefield. But we were trying. We'd told my parents everything Mike had discovered about Betty's situation with Marcus Webb and his wife. Everyone was on edge, waiting for Betty to make her move. Zach, thankfully, seemed oblivious to the tension. At 3 years old, all he cared about was that Mommy and Daddy were both home. That Tuesday morning, Dean's phone started buzzing while he was making Zach breakfast. Betty, miss me yet? Dean showed me the message, his jaw tight. We'd agreed on complete transparency moving forward. I'm back in town. We need to finish what we started. Don't ignore me, Dean. You know I don't like being ignored. I've been very patient for 3 years. My patience is running out. The messages kept coming throughout the day, each one more demanding than the last. You owe me, remember? I gave you everything you needed to destroy them. Did you forget about our plan, about what we're supposed to accomplish together? By evening, her texts had turned threatening. If you don't answer me, I'll come to your house. I'll tell Angela everything myself. Is that what you want? Dean looked at me, his face pale. She doesn't know that you already know. What do you want to do? I want to end this. I want to face her and make it clear that whatever we had is over and she has no power over our family anymore. I surprised myself by saying, then let her come. Angela. No, Dean, I'm tired of being afraid of my own sister. I'm tired of her controlling our lives from the shadows. Let her come and let's finish this. The next evening, Betty's final text arrived. I'll be there at 8 p.m. Be ready to talk. At 7:45 p.m., I called my parents. Mom, Dad, I need you to come over now and don't ask questions until you get here. Angela, what's wrong? Mom's voice was immediately worried. Just come, please. At exactly 8 p.m., there was a knock at our front door. Dean and I looked at each other, and he nodded. I took Zach upstairs to his room with a movie and told him to stay there no matter what. Dean opened the door, and there she was. Betty looked exactly the same as she had 3 years ago. Perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent, and that smile that had fooled so many people into thinking she was innocent. Hello, Dean. She said that same casual familiarity from her phone call. Betty. Dean stepped aside to let her in, and I got my first look at my sister in 3 years. She walked into our living room like she owned it, her eyes scanning everything. The family photos on the mantel, Zach's toys scattered around, the life Dean and I had built together. Nice place, she said, settling onto our couch without being invited. Very domestic. Is this what you chose over me? Dean remained standing. We need to talk. Yes, we do. Betty's voice was still sweet, but there was steel underneath it. You've been ignoring my calls, Dean. That's not like you. A lot of things have changed. Have they? Because from where I'm sitting, you have everything we planned to take from them. The perfect house, the perfect family, access to all that Thomas money. You did good work, baby. My stomach turned at the endearment. Dean's fists clenched. That's not what this is, he said carefully. Betty's smile faltered slightly. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not going through with it. I never was. Don't be ridiculous. Of course you are. That was always the plan. The plan was based on lies, Betty. I know the truth about what really happened with your family. Betty's expression shifted, the mask slipping just slightly. What truth? I know about the mayor's husband. I know about all the married men, all the lawsuits, all the chaos you caused. Your family didn't abandon you. They protected themselves from you. Betty stood up slowly, her eyes narrowing. Who told you that? Angela did. My wife. My wife, the woman you described as spoiled and cruel, who turned out to be one of the kindest people I've ever met. Your wife? Betty's voice was dangerously quiet. Yes, we're married, Betty. We have a son together, and I love them more than my own life. That's when Betty's careful facade completely cracked. Her face twisted with rage, and she let out a bitter laugh. You fell for her? You actually fell for the precious princess? Oh, Dean, you pathetic fool. She's not special. She's just the daughter who stayed in line, who never challenged them, who took everything that should have been mine. That's not true. It is true. Betty screamed, her composure completely gone. I was the firstborn. I should have inherited everything, but no, they gave it all to perfect little Angela because she was their obedient puppet. Dean took a step back. Betty, you need to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You promised me you'd help me get revenge on them. You promised you'd make them pay for what they did to me. Instead, you're playing house with my sister. I'm not playing house. I'm living my life. With my family. They're not your family. Betty's voice was shrill now. I'm supposed to be your family. We had a plan, Dean. We were going to destroy them together and then start over somewhere new. That's when I heard the front door open. My parents' voices carried from the entryway. Angela, we're here, sweetheart. Betty's head snapped toward the sound, her eyes wide. Who is that? Dean and I exchanged a look. This was it. Mom, Dad, I called out. We're in the living room. My parents appeared in the doorway, and I watched my mother's face go completely white when she saw Betty standing in our living room. Rebecca? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Betty turned around slowly, and for just a moment, I saw vulnerability flash across her face before the rage returned. Hello, Mother. Miss me? The silence that followed was deafening. My father stood frozen behind my mother, his face cycling through shock, pain, and something that looked like grief. My mother's hand flew to her chest, and for a moment I thought she might collapse. Betty, Dad said finally, his voice hoarse. What are you doing here? I'm here for what's mine, Betty said, her voice cold and calculating. What was always supposed to be mine? What are you talking about? Mom asked, her voice faint. Dean stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, there's something you need to know. Betty and I used to be involved. She convinced me that your family had wronged her and asked me to help her get revenge. My father's expression darkened. What kind of revenge? She wanted me to make Angela fall in love with me, then break her heart and steal money from your business, Dean said. But I never went through with it. When I learned the truth about Betty, I realized she'd been lying about everything. Betty laughed, a harsh sound devoid of any warmth. The truth? What truth is that, Dean? About the affairs, the lawsuits, the chaos you caused. Your family didn't abandon you. They protected themselves from you. Protected themselves? Betty's voice rose, her mask slipping completely. They threw me away like garbage the moment I stopped being their perfect little puppet. Betty, that's not what happened, Mom said, tears in her eyes. We tried to help you. Help me? Betty screamed. You helped me right out of the family. You gave everything to her. She pointed at me with pure venom. The business, the inheritance, your precious approval, everything that should have been mine as the firstborn. Betty, please, Dad said. We can work this out. Work this out? Now you want to work things out? Betty's laugh was bitter and cruel. It's been years. After you replaced me with perfect little Angela and her perfect little family, I found my voice. Betty, I never wanted to replace you. I missed you. I worried about you. Liar. Betty's face was twisted with rage. You took everything from me. My inheritance, my place in this family, and now you've turned Dean against me too. I chose to walk away from your plan because it was wrong, Dean said firmly, because Angela is a good person who didn't deserve what you wanted to do to her. A good person? Betty's voice dripped with sarcasm. She's weak. She's boring. She's everything I'm not, and that's why you all love her more. Betty, we love you too, Mom pleaded. We always have. We just couldn't enable your destructive behavior anymore. Destructive behavior? What do you mean destructive behavior? Betty was screaming now, her composure completely gone. You want to see destructive? I should have burned your precious business to the ground. I should have destroyed all of you years ago. The venom in her voice made me step back. This wasn't the sister I remembered, even at her worst. This was someone consumed by hatred. You still can't take responsibility for your own actions, Dad said sadly. Even now it's everyone else's fault. Betty's eyes narrowed to slits. My actions? What about your actions, huh? What about cutting off your own daughter? What about choosing the obedient one over the difficult one? We chose to protect our family from someone who was hurting everyone around her, Dad said firmly, including herself. Well, congratulations, Betty said, her voice turning deadly calm. You successfully drove me away, but I'm back now, and I'm not going anywhere. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely steady. Betty smiled, and it was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen. I want what's mine, the business, the money, my place in this family, and if I can't have it, she shrugged casually. Well, let's just say it would be a shame if certain information about Dean's little deception became public. Imagine what that would do to the family reputation. You're threatening us? Dean asked incredulously. I'm stating facts. You all owe me. Years of being cut off. Years of struggling while you all lived comfortably off what should have been mine. I think it's time for some compensation. That's when I stood up, feeling calmer than I had since this nightmare began. You know, Betty, you're right. We do need to talk about compensation. Betty looked surprised by my sudden change in tone. Finally, some sense. I'm talking about the $400,000 you stole from Marcus Webb, I said calmly. The color drained from Betty's face. What did you say? Marcus Webb, private lender, married to Amanda Webb, a very wealthy, very vindictive woman who doesn't take kindly to anyone crossing her family. I walked closer to her. Sound familiar? Betty's composure cracked. How do I know? Because unlike the naive little sister you thought you'd find, I prepared for this conversation. I gestured toward Dean. Dean's best friend Mike is a private investigator. He's been tracking your movements. You had me investigated? Betty's voice was shrill. We had to protect our family from whatever you were planning, and we found out exactly why you're really here. I crossed my arms. You're not here for revenge, Betty. You're here because Amanda Webb wants her husband's money back with 50% interest, or she's going to have some very unpleasant people break your legs. Betty's face went white. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You seduced Marcus Webb, convinced him to give you $400,000, and now his wife, who has connections to very dangerous people, wants it back, with interest. That's not, Betty tried to explain. Amanda Webb isn't some ordinary scorned wife, is she? She's the kind of woman who makes people disappear when they cross her. That's why you're so desperate. That's why you came back to force Dean to steal from my family. You need $600,000 to make this go away. Your plan failed when you tried to use Dean to steal from our parents. And now you are in need of that money before Amanda have someone break your pretty little bones. The fight went out of Betty completely. Her legs gave out, and she dropped to her knees in front of our parents. Please, she sobbed, all pretense gone. Please help me. I don't want to die. I don't want them to break my bones. Amanda Webb, I am terrified of her. She has people who will hurt me, really hurt me. Mom stepped back, shocked by the sudden change. Please, Daddy, Betty begged, crawling toward him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I was wrong about Angela. I was wrong about all of it. I was so angry for so long, and I made terrible choices. She turned to Dean and me, tears streaming down her face. Angela, I'm sorry I tried to hurt you. Dean, I'm sorry I manipulated you. I was jealous and bitter, and I wanted everyone to be as miserable as I was. Betty, stop, Mom said, her voice breaking. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Betty continued, her voice desperate. I know I've done horrible things, but please, I'm begging you. Help me this one time and I'll disappear forever. You'll never see me again. Dad stared down at his daughter on her knees, his face a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. I prayed for you, he said, his voice breaking. Every night for years, I prayed that you were okay, that you were safe, that maybe you'd learned from your mistakes and were building a better life somewhere. Betty looked up at him with desperate hope. But this? Dad's voice cracked with emotion. This again? What you always do. Is it worth it, Betty? Being a mistress? Stealing? Using your body to get anything you want? You are such an embarrassment. Betty flinched as if he'd physically struck her. You caused us so much pain, Dad continued, tears streaming down his face. Your whole life, all you've ever done is take and hurt and destroy. I give up. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Daddy, please. Betty pleaded. I can't believe this, he said, his voice turning cold. After all this time, we thought maybe you'd learned your lesson. We thought maybe you'd grown up. We were so wrong. Daddy, please. You did nothing but hurt us, you selfish brat. Dad's voice cracked with emotion. Your whole life, all you've ever done is take and hurt and destroy. And now you come crawling back because you're finally facing consequences for your actions? Dad took a shuddering breath. I will give you the $600,000, but that's it. Nothing more. Ever. You will sign an agreement that you will never contact this family again. You will disappear from our lives completely. David, Mom started. No, Margaret. She made her choices. She chose strangers over family, revenge over love, greed over everything decent. This is who she is. He looked down at Betty with something that might have been pity. After this, I don't want to see you ever again. You are no longer my daughter. Betty's sobs intensified, but she nodded frantically. Yes, okay, whatever you want. Thank you, thank you. Don't thank me, Dad cut her off. This isn't forgiveness. This isn't love. This is me protecting my real family from having your blood on our hands. Then Dad turned to Dean, his expression complicated. And you? He was quiet for a long moment. Dean, I don't know what to say to you. You lied to us for 3 years. You brought this chaos into our family. Dean's face was pale. Mr. Thomas, I know But, Dad continued, you also chose love over revenge. You chose to protect Angela instead of hurt her. And you've been a good husband and father, even while carrying this burden. Dad's voice was heavy with exhaustion. I'm disappointed in you, Dean. Deeply disappointed. But I can see that you love my daughter and grandson. That has to count for something. It does, I said quietly, taking Dean's hand. It counts for everything. Dad nodded slowly. Then we'll work on forgiveness. In time. But it will take time, Dean. A lot of time. I understand, Dean said, his voice thick with emotion. Betty was still on the floor, a broken shell of the confident woman who'd walked into our house. "So this is it," she whispered. "This is how our family ends?" "No, Betty," I said sadly. "This is how it ended years ago when you chose hatred over healing. We're just finally acknowledging it." The next day, my father made arrangements to transfer the money and draw up the legal documents. I realized that sometimes love means knowing when to let go. Betty had chosen her path long ago, and no amount of family loyalty could save someone who didn't want to be saved. The sister I'd loved was truly gone, and for the first time, I was okay with that. 1 year later, I watched from the kitchen window as Dean pushed Zach on the swing set he'd built in our backyard. Our son's laughter carried through the glass, pure and joyful, completely unaware of the storm his family had weathered the year before. The past year hadn't been easy. Marriage counseling, trust exercises, difficult conversations that stretched late into the night. There were moments when I wondered if we'd ever find our way back to each other, and moments when Dean looked at me like he was afraid I might disappear. But we'd done the work. Both of us. Dean had learned to live with complete transparency, no more protecting me from difficult truths. I'd learned that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it did mean choosing love over fear. The legal documents Dad had drawn up were never violated. Betty had taken the money, paid off Marcus Webb and his vengeful wife, and disappeared completely. No contact, no attempts to reach out, no social media presence we could find. Mike's contacts confirmed she'd settled her debt and vanished without a trace. She'd gotten what she needed to survive, but lost her family forever in the process. My parents still grieved the daughter they'd lost, but they'd found peace in the family they still had. Sunday dinners were lighter now, filled with Zach's chatter about preschool and Dean's terrible dad jokes that made my mother laugh despite herself. I reflected on how much had changed. The foundation of lies that had nearly destroyed us had been replaced with something infinitely stronger. Truth, choice, and the daily decision to build something beautiful together. Betty had tried to destroy us with the truth about our beginning. Instead, she'd given us the chance to build something real. And for that, I was almost grateful.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.